The thing is going outstanding. We've had one of the largest turnouts we've had in Manatee County in years. We're approaching the 79% number, 78 and change. So it's just been a phenomenal turnout. Oh my gosh, I tell you, the vote by mail, we sent out over 80,000 ballots. We've got 68,500 and some of them back. It's just been a phenomenal thing. And you know, we really pushed that. We pushed that and we pushed the early voting. We more than tripled the amount of early voting that showed up. And I think because we opened 5 early voting locations instead of just 1, we really pushed the vote by mail ballots and people responded to it, and they responded with enthusiasm. I got to tell you, I think more and more people are going to vote by mail because they're talking to their friends and realizing how convenient it is. You get a better educated voter. They've got time to study the ballot. They get time to look at it. It's insurance for them. It really is. If they, for some reason or another, they can't get into the polling place on time, they can't get into early voting, they can always drop it in the mail and it'll count. You know, it's just so exciting. The turnout has been phenomenal. I wish the turnout was under a little bit different circumstance. It bothers me that so many people are voting against something instead of for something. Too many people really love this country, and when people are sitting there voting against people, that really does bother me. Well, Anna Maria was kind of a unique situation out there. We had one of the candidates exercise his right by statute to challenge several of the voters out there. And when you challenge those voters by law, those voters must vote provisional. And so there's about 100 people out there who are very upset that they had to vote provisional because one of the other candidates filed a formal petition to challenge their residency. And all we can do is go by what people tell us they live and show us our identification and use that as a residence, but we'll have to review those. So those will come in, the canvassing board will meet again on Thursday, and we'll look at all of those ballots. My staff is over the top. You know, I could brag about the staff all night long. In fact, you don't have enough airtime for me to, give you all of the allocates about our staff. But, they got in here this morning at 5:15. They'll work tonight probably until probably midnight. They just don't quit, and they just do it so easily. They do it with such confidence of what they're doing. Extremely well trained. Oh, they're like rigged.
Yes.
I got to tell you, we rigged our election. We did. We trained the best people we could find. And so we wanted to make sure that it was rigged to come out on the correct results. When we rigged it to make sure that we hired great poll workers, we spent a lot of time training them. Laura and Cindy spent a lot of time rigging that election so those people knew exactly what they were going to do. And a lot of people look at rigging as a negative. I look at it as a positive. If you're a sailor, you want to rig that boat correctly. If you're an oil worker, you want to rig that oil thing correctly. So I think that too many people use the negative commentation, and I take the positive side. So yeah, we rigged it, and we're very, very happy with the results. I got to tell you, for this election, what we did is we manned every poll correctly. We basically didn't have any lines whatsoever, and a lot of that came about because so many people did vote early, either by mail or in person. So we were over 50% before we ever started. So consequently, when the people went to the polls today, they had a good experience.
Go out that and this. I think the person who did on something, if you write his name to it,
We found out from the family that all 3 of them took a voucher.
My name is Chris Palmer.
I am the records supervisor at Manatee County, Supervisor of Elections. I am in charge of the records department and making sure it runs smoothly, and that when voters call that they get the answers that they would like. We strive very hard to ensure that every person that is registered to vote gets to vote. Yes, and we try to keep everybody's address updated, because that's what's important, because your polling location is dependent upon your residence. Because by Florida law, you are required to vote in the precinct in which you are registered. So many people don't realize that. They think they can vote anywhere in Manatee County, and that is not true. You have to vote within your precinct. Yes, normally when someone calls, the first question we ask is their date of birth, because very few people have the exact same name and date of birth. And then we get their last name, we look them up, we verify their address, because people move a lot. So many times they are not at the address we think they are. So then once we correct their address, we can give them their correct polling location and directions if they need them.
Really? So you
Yes.
can say, if you
Okay, well, changing your address is so much easier than people think. All it takes is a phone call to the county that you've moved into, a phone call, and we can update your address and immediately tell you your precinct. People do not realize it's that easy. I mean, I'm not sure what they expect. You just call, we ask for your date of birth, your last name, and then we update your address. It's immediate. While you're on the phone, your address is already current. If they would just remember to let us know when they move, that will keep their records active. So many times we mail them pieces of mail. They haven't told us they've moved. We get it back as returned mail. This sends out a second piece of mail that we call a final notice. We get this final notice back because we still haven't known they moved, and then that's how a person gets removed from the rolls, and they don't know it because we have attempted to send them two pieces of mail. And when we get it back, we assume they're no longer at that address. Now, they're not removed immediately. They only go inactive. And inactive, you're still eligible to vote. You're inactive for about 2 years, and then you get removed after that. So I find it amazing that we already had 60% of the voters vote before today.
right.
I mean, I find that amazing. 60,000 vote by mail, 23,000 early voters. I mean, 60%, that just amazes me. I think that's the highest turnout I've ever seen in this county. During this election time, we call them temps, but they're like used to be poll workers, so they have a knowledge of the system, and they are very dedicated hard workers. We could not do it without them. I have about 6 of them in the records department. We have about 19 of them at the phone bank who are answering phones from the polls, and they are just very conscientious, and they try their hardest to do the best they can for the voter, because that's all we all want. We all want the best for the voter. We want everybody to vote. It's, they just do the best they can, and we appreciate them very much.
I'm a Manatee County Vote by Mail Ballot Coordinator. My name's Michelle Ripp. Right now we're at the end of the day. We're at 6:32. We've logged in everything pretty much that we're going to get so far today. Canvas board is still in meeting. They're looking at the ballots that we referred over there, as far as, we felt the signature might not look quite right, or if there was no signature, someone didn't vote in the correct precinct, anything like that. Canvas board makes the decision, not us. And we're looking at over 80,000 sent out.
Wow.
And we've received, I believe, around 70,000. Is that right? 70,000 back?
That's really significant.
It's a tremendous return. We could not be happier with that. It's absolutely easy. You get to sit at your kitchen table, vote your ballot, talk about it with your whomever, take your time. You have plenty of time before the election, obviously. It's sent out a month before the election to you, and it's an easier way to do. You don't have to worry about lines. You don't have to worry about anything. Early voting lines at your precinct,
Traffic.
which is becoming significant this time of year. Overseas, civilians and military, whether they're stateside or overseas, go out 45 days prior to the election. Military and overseas can also receive their ballots via email, and then they're allowed to fax them back, or they can send them back to us by mail. And we've had a tremendous response this year with that. Just hundreds and hundreds of faxes have come back. A ballot has to be physically in our office, here in our hands, by 7 p.m. this evening on election night. The only exception to that is the military and the overseas voters have a 10-day window following, so theirs won't be due until the 18th. And that's the last time the canvass board will meet also, and they will look at those. But they have that 10-day window after the election. So as long as it's in our hands by 7 p.m. tonight, they're good. Like, I will be standing out there at 7 p.m. tonight locking that. And I know my husband asked me, what do you do if someone's sprinting across the parking lot? And like, I'm running the other way. I don't. It's been since I was here. I started in 2008, and I know vote by mail. It was called absentee for years,
Right.
and I know before I started, I don't know when it became anybody could vote by mail. It used to be that you had to have an excuse. I'm out of town. I won't be back. I'm in the hospital. I'm wherever. But you had to have an excuse to get your ballot in the mail, and that's just not so anymore. Anybody can call up and get their ballot mailed to them. You have to be a registered voter, obviously. The easiest thing is you're calling up and you're saying, I decided I want to vote at home this year. Please send the ballot to my residence. That we can take over the phone, no problem. Gets a little more complicated and we have a lot of kids away at school. We have a lot of snowbirds. If you want it sent to an address that we don't happen to have in your record, now we're going to need your signature. So it can get a little more complicated than just picking up the phone, but it's really not that hard. Mr. Bennett, this has been his baby. He has really pushed the vote by mail, and it's really, really gone up. As I said, we sent out over 80,000. I think the most we may have sent out before may have been between 50 and 60. So it increased substantially. I think he plans on building on it, yes. That would certainly be a question for him, but I think we'll know after this election especially how successful it was. And once we get the feedback, and because there's always going to be a few people who are not going to be happy, but if the overall reaction is that it's positive, I think we'll probably keep building on it and keep growing it. Okay, my thought at the end of this day, especially, this has been a pretty contentious election cycle, is that we are trying here, we're trying in every way, as much as we possibly can, to make sure that everybody's vote does count. No matter what you hear out there, what you're reading in the paper, that we're trying to disenfranchise you, that we are trying to not get people. We are working hard to make sure that people can vote, and we will bend over backwards for our voters. To see that their votes get here and that they count. And if they ever have questions, just call us. Don't listen to all of that out there. Call us and get the real information. That I think would be my recommendation to them.
My name's Kelly Elkins. I'm working the phone banks at Manatee County Election Headquarters, and we are basically answering the phones and taking any kind of problems that any of the precincts are having. So we kind of handle all of the voters, any issues that they're having or any precinct issues with the computers, and we handle it accordingly, find the appropriate people, and resolve the issues. The day's been very busy. The phones have been ringing nonstop. We've had a few lulls in the day, but pretty much they've been going nonstop. So it's been busy, but a lot of fun. It's a good experience, and the calls have been coming in from all over the county, so we're answering all 70 precincts. The biggest question, we've had a lot of voters trying to figure out where their polls are, where their precincts are. Some have shown up to the wrong precincts, so because of that, or because of a change of address, that they're not sure that their address has changed and therefore the precinct has changed, so they may not know where the new precinct is. That's probably the most popular one. So we're all here to help each other. Everybody's trying to, there are veterans here that have worked the polls before and are helping the new people out, and then after a few calls, though, I think everybody either remembers or is right on track, and basically has become a veteran themselves, so they know what the next step is, and either they have learned how to handle it themselves or know who to go to and the appropriate person or computer system to get the problem solved. Probably dealing with all of the issues, just talking to the different people at all the precincts and kind of hearing how it's going over there and kind of getting a feel for what's going on in the county and how exciting, it's election day. A lot of people have a lot of excitement with it, so getting to feel it from all across the county is really neat, and being a big part of that makes it a lot of fun. They're very dedicated. Everybody's working very hard, has been putting in full effort. We've been here since about 5:30 this morning, so it's been a long day, but everybody's still wide awake and moving fast and working very hard and very, putting in a lot of effort to make sure all the problems are handled and everybody that wants to vote is able to vote. There's a lot of people, with the polls closing especially, the time's running short. We don't have much time left in the day. So there's a lot of phone calls coming in of people that really are trying to get that last minute vote in and are, worried that it might not count. So trying to deal with the problems and get it across. But everybody's been working very hard on trying to resolve every issue.
I am Maddie Kaler. I go to Nolan Middle School, and we are here to watch everything that happens on Election Day.
Well, we decided this because I noticed in our school that a lot of people were talking about political candidates, and when I asked them how the Electoral College worked or how voting worked, they said they had no idea. So we tried to make it our goal of sorts to educate our school in general on the Electoral College and how voting actually takes place. Well, we did find that some people actually did know quite a lot about the Electoral College. However, a few of them thought they were more likely direct votes. But the Electoral College seems to be it's a lot easier of a system that makes it so that it's very, very easy to tally up rather than having each and every vote count as one singular vote. That way it's easier for mistakes not to be made.
I think it is a really good idea for schools or parts of schools to come and do this. Like I know today, our Nolan Middle School did do a election where we did actually vote on who we thought should win, and tomorrow we're going to get our results on that. And I do think that a lot of people didn't know who they were going to vote for until we did register, and our deadline was the same day, I believe, as actual registration ended. And we learned the whole process of how you vote and how you have to register and all of that. So.
Well, the most surprising thing that I found out was that the one electoral vote per X amount of people is actually different in every state, which I thought was a little bit weird considering that, one vote counts as one no matter which state you're in. So that to me seemed kind of odd. Well, I personally feel like it's a good area to get into because it makes you a lot more involved with your country and it's not, just like John F. Kennedy said, it's not what the country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Well, she did mention how important it was that we vote when we're old enough in general because it's pretty much a responsibility because if no one votes, well, then we won't. It's the sense of democracy is ruined because not everyone has a voice. And she also talked about how having the elections fair the way they were very important because in other countries they don't have voting. And most people consider voting sometimes to be like, oh, why is it on a work day? Oh, I'm too busy to go. But really, a lot of countries don't have that luxury of being able to choose their leaders.
I think the excitement behind me says it all. I actually had the idea because my father made sure I was in the voting booth. Getting a little choked up here. You guys make me proud. These are an amazing group of children. They lead Nolan. And I wanted them to see what they're trying to achieve at Nolan is actually on a larger scale, and what our county officers and volunteers put together to ensure that our vote and every vote is counted and everyone has their voice in our democracy. For me, I wanted them to see that process because it brings it to life. And that, to me, is the ultimate education, when you get out of the classroom and you can show children what's actually happening in the real world. And this excitement is payoff for being here late at night because hopefully they'll never forget that excitement, because I never did when I saw the voting booth and saw the process for myself when I was younger. I really think this brings them enthusiasm that what we're doing on a small scale, that they can be change makers in their world. For Nolan, We come from different areas, and lots of people have assumptions about Nolan that that's not true, but these students see each and every person at Nolan as part of our larger community, and this excitement that they're getting today, they can take back in the leadership that they can use to change our school and hopefully their communities as they get older.
Well, kids, you already met Mike Bennett, the Supervisor of Elections. He runs the election process itself, keeping track of all the people that are registered, sending out early voting ballots for people to vote by mail, setting up the early voting sites so people can come in over the last week to vote early, and then running all the 70 precinct sites for voting today. Commissioner Bustle and myself, I'm a county judge, and Mike Bennett, we form what's called the Canvassing Board. The Canvassing Board is the actual official body under state law that supervises the election. We're responsible for certifying that all the vote tally machines, those for the early voting that you see right over here, and those that are all the different 70 precincts, are properly calibrated several weeks ago. And we make sure they're at zero when it comes time to vote, because what do you think? You don't want to start with numbers already in the machine. You want to start with the machine at zero. So we made sure, it's called a logic and accuracy test. Now, when there's problems with certain ballots that we have had, we review those ballots to determine if there's a way the ballot can be cured. We had any number of voters who sent in absentee or mail-in ballots and they didn't sign it. So the Supervisor of Elections sent out letters to all these people that didn't sign their ballot to say, please complete this form and put some proof of identity so that we can validate the ballot. And that's what we did this evening. We spent some time here yesterday. So we've been working for several weeks with the supervisor to make sure that everything is run smoothly. And at the end of the day today, we'll preliminarily certify the results. We'll come back on Thursday in the evening, look at more questionable ballots that have arisen since now to then, and then we'll do a second preliminary certification. And then on the 18th of November, we come back and do the final approval of the election process. Larry?
Gee, I think you've covered it all, Judge. Have you guys studied the election process, and so you're here to see it in action, I guess? Yes. Well, what do you think? I mean, is it like you thought it was going to be? No. What's different?
Machines.
The machines? Yeah, those are pretty powerful. They count very fast, and they can. Part of the job that we do is to look at some of the ballots that the machine rejects, and we try to figure out what it is that caused it to kick out and not count. And it's so important when you vote that you fill in the oval carefully. You got to color within the lines, so to speak. And if it's not, a lot of people will vote twice. That's an overvote, or not vote at all, and that's called an undervote. And part of our job is to look at those, and if there's any chance at all of figuring out what the voter intended, then we try to determine that. That's about all I can think of.
Do any of you have any questions for Judge Singer or Commissioner Bustle?
No, sir.
Anybody?
No questions,
All
huh?
right.
You explained it too well.
Okay.
Question here.
Go ahead.
So, were you elected to the canvassing board?
Well, that's actually a great question. The Florida legislature, has set it up. Every county has their own canvassing board, and each canvassing board is made up of the elected supervisor of election, the chairman of the county commission, and if the chairman isn't available, then a county commissioner, and then one of the county judges. In our case, with the county judges, there's 4 of us, and we selected from amongst the 4 of us who would be the canvassing board person, and I'll be acting as the canvassing board representative for the county courts through the end of this election. Next year, a different judge is going to come in and do it for 4 years, and I'll be his alternate. Yes?
Do you guys get to vote like everyone else, or do you guys keep not vote?
We do get to vote like everyone else, but unlike most of the people I know, I didn't tell anybody who I was voting for.
That's important.
Well, because we have to appear to be completely nonpartisan and fair, and we cannot indicate that we have a preference for one person in office or another, or one issue, because we had a lot of constitutional amendments and referendums regarding sales tax and the like.
In my case, as a county commissioner, there are 7 of us, and 2 of them are in this election. So I could not be in favor of either of those. I couldn't state publicly or get on their campaign somehow, because that would be a conflict of interest with the canvassing board. So we try real hard to be impartial and let the best person win.
We also have a feeling on the canvassing board that we really don't want any election to be too close, because then we'll have to do the recount and make sure that every I is dotted and T is crossed. And it's very difficult when an election will come down to 2 or 3 votes with all the effort that the candidates put into their particular position. Looking at the preliminary results tonight, there may be 1 or 2 election places that are close, but may not be so close that it's going to require a manual recount. We'll find out later tonight. Yes?
Another question. So what happens to someone if they are to write in, if they're to spell, like, can you spell the name wrong, or does it have to be perfect?
If it's a write-in?
Yeah.
Well, you should try to be as clear as you can so that we know what the intent is.
Oh.
We usually don't have a problem with write-ins. I haven't had any that I'm aware of that's come up in this election yet.
What's the margin that triggers a recount in the state of Florida?
Well, there's going to be an audit of the results. Then, when it comes to the specific percentage, we turn to our experts. That would be Mike Bennett and his staff. Scott Harrington is our essential leader on that. And when we sit down and we meet, he's got the statutes out. He'll tell us how many precincts we have to choose to do the audit and what triggers the manual audit. It's all set out by state law. And I would know it all, but I've read the state law. It's long, it's complicated, and quite frankly, if you were to sit down and read it, you might fall asleep in the middle of the process.
Well, and you're speaking percentage, so it also depends on the number of ballots cast, correct?
Exactly, exactly.
So you have to know how many voted first.
You got to leave. Okay? Who was first president of the United States?
George Washington.
You're all wrong.
Oh, no,
Washington was the 6th president. He was not the first. Okay?
Okay.
If you think about
we're
it,
all gone.
no, if you got to think about it now, if he was sworn in as president in 1979, but we signed the Constitution in 76, who was president between that time? Okay? There were several other people. Okay? And so he was actually, okay, here's the tough one, and this is the trick question. Which president was king before he was a president? Boy, y'all gonna miss. Even your teacher doesn't know that. Yes, it was, but it's a trick question. You see, Gerald Ford was born with the last name King, but he was adopted. He was adopted, so he was a king before he was. Okay? Well, let me ask you something. How many presidents of the United States became president of the United States because of one vote? One vote.
0, 4, 2.
One.
Oh.
One vote. Anyone else? That's your homework assignment, because it's a true story. It's true. It was on one vote. Okay? But in order to get it, you got to go back and look at the Electoral College. Okay? And see what the numbers came out on that. But how many states became a state because of one vote?
A lot.
4. 4.
That was your answer.
Washington, Oregon, let's see, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and one other, I can't remember. Okay. I can't remember. But anyhow, what other question do you have? You got to have
Do you
questions.
count the votes by hand?
No. We have a very, very fast, high-speed machine that scans them just at an unbelievable speed. It really does. Now, some of them we will end up counting by hand, okay? For one reason or another, the machine will reject them. But the bulk of them right now today, they are all counted electronically.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Which president won by one vote?
Which president won by one vote? I'm not going to tell you because that's your homework assignment.
That's
You
what
can
I'm
email
doing
him.
my homework.
No. I like how you think, though. I like how you think.
That's why she's our president.
Have you all been watching the results come in?
We were watching, was it MSNBC? At the restaurant they had the results.
Okay, there you go. But does anybody have a question before I go back?
Now, I want to know how we trust you with our votes. How do you
It's
get your-
real simple, okay? In that room is the canvassing board. The canvassing board is made up by appointed by the chief judge of the county. He will appoint a judge. So one of those gentlemen is a judge. The chief or the chairman of the county commission, they will appoint a commissioner. Okay, so you've got the chief judge of the county appointing somebody, the chairman of the county commission, and I'm the supervisor of elections. We're the canvassing board. Okay, as members of the canvassing board, we do not endorse any candidates. We don't go to their fundraisers. We don't work on their campaigns. We are as neutral as possible. Everything we do is in the sunshine. Everything is being watched. The canvassing board watches all the votes. The lady there in the gray sweater, she's the head of the Democrat Party in Manatee County. The head of the Republican Party was here a few minutes ago. So everybody's kind of watching to make sure that all of the votes get counted and that they get counted very honestly and accurately.
Pull up